Doug, thank you for doing this and
Very
doing
welcome.
it again. Um, actually, we did this once before, and somebody corrupted the data, and we had to start over again.
Well, I just hope I can remember my answers.
But remember the questions. As we talked about, we're the videos a lot of times are about the journeys people have taken over their lives with motorcycles and how motorcycling has been part of that. Today we want to focus a little different. We do want to get into that, but we want to talk a lot about what you guys have done with your local uh, Lone Star BMW riders, and going back kind of through COVID and the ride program and how that wound up at 114 rides in 12 months, group rides in 12 months, and kind of how that came about. But before we jump into that, kind of how'd you get started in motorcycling and
Well,
kind of
and
your background?
like a lot of people in high school, I rode for a little while. I started out with a Cushman Eagle motor scooter, then graduated to a Honda 150 when Honda came to town. Uh, and then, as soon as I was able to get a car, I dropped the motorcycle. So for the next 50 years, it was car, family, and work. And then approaching retirement, I started thinking about, well, my wife started thinking about it for me. You know, you got to have something to do in retirement because all I'd ever done was work. So I made a list of things that, some activities, hobbies, and so forth that, I might consider doing. Fishing was the first one. And after 4 hours at Lake Lavon, watching a bobber go up and down, it was like, no, I need something a little more exciting than this. So somewhere on the list, up on the top of the list, was motorcycling. I was able to secure a place at one of the MS, the Motorcycle Safety Foundation courses. Because I figured that my high school days skills probably weren't going to translate into modern technology or
Modern
modern
machinery.
times. So anyway, I took the course, and the following week I went out to kind of look at motorcycles. And about 4 hours later, I brought one home. So that's kind of where it started. The year 2000, June 9th of 2000 is when I got my first real motorcycle. And joined the Honda Riders Club of America since it was a Honda.
What was the first bike?
It was a Honda Shadow Aero 1100, which we still have in the family. It's sitting in Norman, Oklahoma right now under a tarp. But a few years later, people in the club convinced me, since I wasn't keeping up with an 1100, convinced me that I could actually ride a Honda Goldwing. And so I bought one in 2003. Still riding a Honda Goldwing now. So it's been like 22 years, I guess, on a Honda Goldwing. And I know I'm in a BMW club, but I haven't found a BMW model that I could actually reach the ground on. So I'm staying with my Goldwing for now, and it's paid for. So.
That's the nice thing about the MOA. We just care that people ride. We're not particular about what they ride.
And over that time, let's see, in the last 25 years, I've put on about 400,000 miles on motorcycles. I've been to every state of the United States and almost all of the provinces of Canada. And to this point, really enjoyed it. My wife accompanied me until the year 2015. So she probably rode about 100,000 miles on the back of it. Then age kind of got to her with hips and knees and so forth. So she jumped off and bought a Jeep.
I understand the knees and wrists and orthopedics. I just got back on the bike last week after 9 months to the day from the last time I rode.
Yeah.
Which was when I got back from the national rally for BMW last June 22nd, and I got back on the bike March 22nd was my first ride, and that was basically to the grocery store, but it sure felt good.
Yeah.
So,
getting a little bit more current, I guess I should say that I joined the Lone Star BMW Riders Group in December of 2015, the same year you became president. And I've enjoyed the hell out of it. We've got a great group of people. I've learned a lot about riding and touring from them as well. And I think I've shared some of what I've learned with them as well. So it's been a great experience.
Yeah, so fast forward just a little bit. We hit 2020 and we hit COVID. And, the Charter Club motto has always been, we ride. It's some clubs get into charities, and some get into events, and some get into going to rallies. I know several clubs in Texas that their biggest enjoyment is on a Friday night. Everybody meets somewhere for dinner, or Saturday morning they meet for breakfast, and then several people would break off in twos and threes and go ride. The Lone Star BMW riders, their focus is get groups of people together and do group rides.
Right.
So it kind of took a turn with COVID. Kind of explain what happened and what your role was, and how you guys kept that going.
Okay. Prior to the COVID business, I was a tour meister for the group. During COVID, I was president for a couple of years, and along with Austin Hutton, who had been president and until recently was still president, we kind of got together and tried to understand what all the rules were about.
That's right.
And but there was masking, there was staying 6 feet apart. Restaurants were closing, or they were doing only to-go orders, that kind of thing. But we wanted to still ride, and we kind of thought, well, you're wearing a mask, okay, that's fine. But while we're riding, we're wearing a helmet, and we're going 60 miles an hour, so it was kind of hard for any kind of virus to catch up with us, we thought. And with the restaurant situation being the way it is, what we came up with was what we termed picnic rides. So what we did was we found a series of parks, if you will, that would support a picnic all over North Texas. And so we started riding to these parks. Everybody'd bring a brown bag lunch and a drink. And we could still sit around at 6 feet if we needed to and have our lunch, have our discussion, and of course we've done our ride. And along the way we also found out that several of these parks were close to a Dairy Queen, so that added a little bit more emphasis to join the ride because you got an ice cream cone at the end of the day. And it became very successful. I think even in the years of the COVID, we were still putting up 40 to 50 rides. And now we did go to some restaurants, but particularly we looked for those that had patios like we're on today, so that you could eat outside. And most of the members were very favorable to what we were doing, and I agreed to do it. Now there were some who still thought that being that close together with people was a little bit of an issue, but most people went along with it, and we did well. We kept our programs up, and I think everybody was happy.
And let's face it, with our riding population is aging. I mean, neither one of us have the dark colored mustaches or beards we used to.
I color this because I didn't like black.
Yeah, right. And there are those that have, medical conditions or underlying issues and things that just couldn't ride during that time. And most of those have come back because after COVID, the whole ride program kind of exploded, and some things happened there. Kind of talk about where it was then, and we're doing 40, 50 rides a year, and how you wound up at 114, because that takes more than a couple of people when you're doing group rides.
Basically, two things happened. I became tour meister for the second time last year, and realized that it wasn't as much about the numbers of rides, but how is the club going to go into the future? Lots of clubs, they age out and then they just go away. That's kind of what happened to the Honda Riders Club of America, except that Honda pulled its funding, so that was the big one there.
Yep.
But I wanted a program where we had enough people within the club that had experience and a desire to lead rides. That's the key to the whole thing. If you don't have people that are going to lead the ride, you don't have a ride. Because people who aren't in that vein are waiting for a call. They're not making a call. So last January, not this January, but in 2024 in January, we had a group meeting and asked people to join the ride committee and then commit to whether they wanted to lead rides, sweep rides, or plan rides, or do all three, or a combination of the three. We ended up with 28 people. We ended up with 17 of those people willing to lead rides. And so following that, we had a meeting about how do you lead a ride. And then we had another meeting about how you plan rides, because both of those elements are pretty much necessary in order to conduct these programs. And then the other thing that we did, well, I guess there were two other things that we did. Not only did we form this formal organization, and again, great members. You know, everybody on the ride committee was really into it. You know, of course, everybody has kind of some restrictions. You know, like some people don't want to lead every ride. Some just a few rides a year are fine. And
some of us still work for a living.
Some people still work. Yeah. So we had that kind of a group. And the other two things that happened was that we actually managed it. You know, it's one thing to form an organization and have volunteers, but if you don't manage it, it doesn't work. So, and I wouldn't say that I was on the phone all the time, but you know, on a particular ride, I might talk to somebody about the next ride. And will you do one? And do you want to plan it? Do you want me to hand you one? Whatever you need to make that ride. So
one of the things that strikes me when I go on some of these rides, we're not a group that if you have 20 riders show up, you've got one lead and one sweep. You have to have enough leaders and sweeps to break that up into groups, because I don't know about all states, but in Texas, there's some municipalities, if you go riding through and you've got 10 or 12 bikes in a line, they're going to pull you over and stop you for impeding traffic, not having a parade permit. You know, they will find reasons. And so you tend to break those up into smaller chunks.
Yeah, I have one incident many years ago when I was with Honda. Well, it was with Southern Cruisers, I think was the group I was with at the time. We got pulled over in Marietta, Oklahoma, because we had 108 bikes.
Yeah, that's a bit much.
Yeah, the sheriff was not happy.
Yeah.
So right there at the intersection, we split up into about groups of 20 and went on down the road. Yep.
I got stopped in Decatur, Texas one time. We had groups of 10.
Yeah.
And they said they had to be groups of 8 or less.
Right.
But
so anyway, picking up on this, in 2024, when we got to the point of 114 rides during the year, we had about 15 or 16 of our ride committee members that had actually led at least one ride during that year. And we had 5 or 6 people who led the majority of the rides. The other thing is, again, it comes down to people and availability to some extent. Most of the rides that were led by people who were retired. But in order not to disenfranchise those that are still working, we tried very hard to have as many rides on the weekends as we had during the week.
And I think through the different types of rides, because it's not just jump on the bike, go for an hour, although we do some of those.
The way we've lined it up and turned it is that a ride that happens during the work week we call a grumpy old men ride.
We've had to have women, grumpy old men and women.
And ladies.
Yes.
We do have a couple of ladies who ride with us.
Yep.
And then on the weekend we have what we call the day rides. And all of these typically start out at maybe 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. They wrap up around 2, 3, or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then for those that have a little bit more time or want to be a little bit more adventurous or see other things, we have multi-day rides where we typically might leave on a Friday, come back on a Sunday, spending the night somewhere. And then we've also had what we would call epic rides, which is rides that are a week, about 6, 7, 8, 10 days long. They all have kind of varied. Last year we had Tom Moffitt, who was a retired person, an ex-semi-race motorcycle racer, ex-Marine, and big enthusiast. That's the best way to describe Tom.
Yes.
And Tom, by the way, led 62 of the 114 rides that we had last year. A lot because he just can't stay in the house. He's got to be out.
That has something to do with his better half, but what was Tom's last birthday?
He's 87 years old now.
And leading 60 some odd rides a year.
Right. Yeah. And anyway, one of our longest rides, and we have maybe one of these a year, he led a 10, maybe almost 11-day ride to the western United States, where he went up through Utah and Wyoming. I guess the big layover was Yellowstone National Park. And then they rode, of course, Chief one of the Indians.
I can't remember.
Chief Joseph Highway. Yep. And the Beartooth Highway, which are very favorite motorcycle roads. And so they spent that amount of time out. They all had a great time. According to Tom, they only found one hotel they wouldn't go back to. So, it all worked out very well. But those are the kind of rides that we've put together. And again, the last point, I've already mentioned his name, but if you have somebody like a Tom Moffat who has the time and has the desire,
Yes.
you can pump up the number of rides that you do. But the other thing that we wanted to make sure was that the rides were quality. They weren't just running from here to the pancake house and back. Now, we had a couple of those. In the summers around here, it's very hot.
Yes.
So we had several of those 114 rides that would start out at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they were over by 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And,
just because of the heat of the day.
even though the restaurant was only a few miles away, we managed to make 90-mile rides out of them anyway, because, again, riding is what we want to do. So even if the restaurant's across the street, we may go up to Oklahoma and back in order to get there.
In order to get the breakfast, yes.
So that's been the program. It's been, I think, very well accepted by people. When we don't ride, we get calls, when's the next ride?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's kind of where we are and how we got there.
Good deal. Well, thanks very much for spending some time with me. One thing I do want to talk about a little bit is at the MOA rally this year, our current tour meister will be doing a seminar that kind of goes through this in more detail with slides and things like that. And we thought it was something interesting that clubs may want to see and things like that. And I'm sure Doug will be working on putting some of those slides together and helping Mr. Kravitz. Alan Kravitz is so when you're looking at the list and planning your rally activities, look for Alan Kravitz's name, and he's going to be putting some stuff together on that and working with the guys. So really look forward to it.
Yeah, should be a good one.
Should be fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed it.
Thanks for doing it again.
Yeah.